Hi, it's editor Alex here. Just before we start the podcast, just it occurred to me as I was editing the video that Willie's end is the audio and video a bit out of sync. the The audio is still seems to be in sync with my end of what questions I've asked him, but just I hope it doesn't ruin the experience of the episode too much. We do use something called Squadcast for the podcast. The first 4 videos I've done with other people have been absolutely fine. But unfortunately, I think Willie was using a mobile phone to record his end of the video, and I don't think it quite liked. It basically. All the audio is intact. I've watched it through and made sure that everything that we're saying it makes sense. Just that in some places the video is a bit out of sync. So Squadcast has this cloud recording and this local recording. The local recordings are in really high quality, and the audio is all nice. The cloud recordings are the server recording the video as you're doing it. I've been through both versions, and the audio on his end is still not great. Hopefully that won't ruin the episode too much, but I hope you enjoy it. Hello, and welcome to the 5th episode of Creator Spotlight from The Interface. Creator Spotlight is a brand new series where we talk to creators about what they make and do and how they got started. Today I'm joined by Willie Howe. Willie has a YouTube channel which covers everything network related, from Ubiquiti to pfSense and everything in between. So welcome, Willie.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show.
That's all right, no problem. So, for people that don't know much about you, so you've got a YouTube channel that covers it. Well, when it got started, it covered a lot of Ubiquiti stuff, and obviously it still is. So, what was the main? Where was the main idea come from for the channel?
So I think it was, back in 2015, maybe a little earlier than that. I'd have to go back and check, but I'd started using a lot of Ubiquiti products. And one thing that I found was that the help that was on the community sometimes wasn't that helpful. And so I thought, you know what, why don't I just record, videos of how to set this stuff up and then put it out there. And my very first videos, which I still get comments on, the computer I started with was like an i3 with like 4 gigs of RAM and a spinning disk. I mean, it was I was doing, basically writing papers on it, watching a couple of YouTube videos and things like that. So I didn't really have a lot of processing power at the time or video editing capability. And depending on who you ask, my edits still aren't that great. But I started with no sound. It was me and a notepad. And in the notepad, I would type, exactly what I was saying. And you can go back and look at the comments. Like somebody, I think I left a comment up there. One of them, they're like, "What are you, stupid? Like you can't talk." Like I troubleshot my computer for like, an hour and then find out there's no audio. So one of these days it's on my list to go back and redo those first few videos. But and it kind of just grew from there, right? People would request videos and then I started getting emails, people were like, "Hey, do you do consulting?" And then I had a couple other YouTubers reach out and be like, "You should really do consulting," and da da da. And it really took on a life of its own. It was nothing really that I ever planned to do. There is no, I have other small businesses in my area, because I do consulting besides the YouTube and besides my regular gig. Sure. And, they're like, "What's your business plan look like?" And I'm like, I didn't have a business plan. This thing just kind of snowballed and took on a life of its own. So, and we do everything from Ubiquiti to, Windows stuff, Synology, pfSense, OpenSense, TP-Link, name a vendor. And, if it's network related, security related, we probably touch it.
Yeah, definitely. I had last week I had Chris from Crosstalk Solutions on the show, and the way it got started is very, very similar. It's sort of, I think Chris said he got made redundant and had to start the YouTube channel. Well, it was one of the ideas he had, as well as doing other bits, and it sort of snowballed from there. So it sounds like the guests I've had on so far that are very similar background. It seems like a very similar way it got started, which is interesting. So
and it is interesting, right? If you think about, so obviously the other 3 guests, I know all 3 of your previous guests. They're in a little bit of a different situation than I am right now. My consulting and YouTube is not my full-time gig. I did a video back in 2017 about how to block ads with an edge router, and that caused my channel to get demonetized. And I've I've gone back several times, and at this point, I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to bother with it because I'd rather not have the monetization and keep the channel growing than do something to get my entire channel taken down, right? So,
Sure.
but you know, definitely, yeah, those guys, that's their main kind of bread and butter, and I'm not there yet. So, but if you would have told me that in 2016, 2017, that people could start a YouTube channel and create a career out of it, I would have told you were crazy, But there's a lot of people that are doing it, and I think that especially the four creators, myself and Chris and Cody and Tom, I think we fill a pretty good niche, and I see more and more people. And it's a tough gig. I've seen a lot of creators come and go. They come and they don't get famous overnight and they give up. You know,
Yep.
uh, and it's all about trying to figure out the algorithm and how it works and how it affects you. And I'm a little over, I think, 76,000 subscribers at this point, and we've got steady growth, and I've got some good stuff planned for next year, so we just got to get there.
Yeah, it's YouTube stuff's interesting. So, apart from the interface, I also work at Hostify,
Right.
and I've been doing a YouTube videos there, and it's quite a learning experience. Just some of the early stuff I did was just a screen recording and just my face in the corner. I've now started to get lighting and different things. So it's sort of learning how it works and improving the quality of stuff you're making. So
Sure. Yeah. And you'll find out pretty soon that you got to have thick skin. Well, you had a blog before, right? So you kind of probably know that, but once you're out there on YouTube and you start gaining a following, like people feel like they know you. They'll say all kinds of crazy things to you. Just grow a little thick skin. You'll be all right.
Yeah. So the this podcast comes from The Interface, which is my blog I've been running for about 10 years. So I've only just started doing the podcast in June, so I sort of have a bit of a break. So it's all about talking to creators who make interesting things on the internet, basically. So yeah. So I remember you touched on the video. I remember you publishing that video with the ad blocker stuff. So I'm not too familiar how the monetization on YouTube works. Is your channel now completely out of the question? YouTube just says no monetization, or is that?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it works. So unless I have some sort of a copyright claim, so if I've used music in videos or things like that where somebody's done a copyright claim, you'll definitely see ads on those videos, but I don't, that revenue goes back to whoever owns the copyright.
Right. So yeah, I guess it's not much of a problem for you, so that's okay.
Yeah, I'd rather just leave it alone and keep the channel growing. But I can tell you, based on looking at statistics and other things, that not being monetized absolutely does affect the growth of your channel.
I noticed, yeah, so I just want to touch on that. I don't know if it's okay to bring up. I noticed some of the old, when I started watching your channel a little while ago, well, probably about 5-6 years ago, I noticed a lot of the videos had quite high views on them. I noticed some of the more recent stuff, it hasn't quite. Is that a direct impact of the monetization, do you think, or?
I think it's a couple of things. I think that's got something to do with it, but I think consistency, I get busy and I don't always get, videos out on a consistent schedule. So I think there's quite a bit that goes into making sure that algorithm is happy. If you look at some other channels, like if you look at Tom, when Tom really put his foot down on the accelerator and was publishing a video, like it seemed like every day, maybe every other day, his growth just exploded. And there's another creator out there who did the same thing, and basically I think he does YouTube full time now. But yeah, definitely there are things that you have to do to keep the algorithm happy, right? So
yeah, it's not something I've had to. The stuff I publish is not something I've had to sort of deal with yet. So it's interesting to see what different perspectives we have. So okay, the main topic of discussion will probably be ubiquity today. So when you started the YouTube channel, was it the first Was the first topic Ubiquity? Was that the first thing that got you going, or?
Uh, well, if you go back and you look at some of the videos, there are some videos where I was tinkering around with, virtualization and stuff like that. And I kind of knew that YouTube was gonna be something. I was out there looking for things, other people were out there looking for things. Um, but when I really started to solidify what I was going to do with the channel, yeah, it was that ubiquity. It was, hey, I can provide this help, and we can have one spot where people can go. And if you look at some of my content, I get into the weeds a little bit more with the ubiquity stuff than some of the other creators do. And so that's kind of my bread and butter. It's not uncommon for other creators to refer people to me once the configuration starts to get a little complicated.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if there's a new product released, most people just cover the new features or the overview, and then there's very little with a lot of things in IT. There's very little coverage of really in-depth configuration.
Right.
It's something it's good to have out there, really. So definitely, yeah. The Ubiquity stuff. I discussed this with Chris. The explosion of interest has gone up immensely recently. I remember when I first got into Ubiquity 7 years ago when I used to work at a WISP, and the general knowledge of the company wasn't that large. Like the few people that worked there with me, we knew about the company, but there wasn't really a mass interest in it like there is now. It's just over the years, it's just, I don't know where it's come from. It's just a massive interest in high quality and like enterprise networking for your house and all the other stuff they've launched since then. So
Yeah, it's
it's
definitely, you're right. It's interesting. So how I actually started using them was I needed a link, wireless link, point to point, that was through a bunch of trees, like literally through trees.
yeah,
And I found their 900 megahertz product,
yeah,
configured it, and I was delivering, literally to this last mile situation through trees, literally a radio sitting behind a tree, shooting through
yeah,
trees and getting like, if you go back and look at that video, I think it's like 10 megs or something like that. But that was kind of, we did that, and then I'm like, oh, they make access points, and then they came out with the edge routers, and I think they're, and people always give them a hard time, right, for starting a product and then dropping it. But when
yeah,
you're as agile as they are, for as big as they are, and there's other companies in that niche as well, um, but they seem to do that, right? Like put something out, okay, this isn't going to work, drop it. For example, if you're looking at the access control stuff, the little module that you mount outside,
yeah.
that is a front row camera, and I don't know if you remember when the front row cameras were out. It
I
was the
do.
necklace, yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
GoPro competitor. I don't think they were ever serious about being a GoPro competitor, right? I think they put that
No.
product out. They wanted to get it out there into people's hands, and they wanted to battle test it and see what kind of problems they were going to have, see how it was going to act in different environments. And then once they had that information, then they took it and they, basically made this outdoor, you access control module. Um, and of course MFI. I know people that are still running MFI products, and I'm like, look, like the last version of that software has got a bad version of DropBear. Like you can't have this in a network where you have to have any type of security, But
Yeah,
now we've got Connect, which is, where they kind of picked up the pieces and are trying to reinvent that wheel. So,
definitely.
and they, whether a product is going to survive or not, like Talk, they had tried Unify Talk before, and it kind of went,
I
yeah, it
remember that.
kind of went a little, dark for a little while, and then came back. Can it compete against, Grandstream? Can it compete against free PBX? I think in the right situation, sure it can. But if that becomes a project that they decide to get rid of, then what happens, right? So um,
Yeah,
we don't always, use all of their products. I do have some people that are using Talk, but it's a very small amount of devices. I have a customer who actually worked directly with Ubiquity, and I think he's got 40 or 45 phones at a hotel campus. Um, to be honest with you, I was stunned actually when he told me that, because I was like, I don't know that I would have done that, and
Mm.
only time will tell. I will tell you that back in 2019, I had a conversation with somebody who was one of Ubiquity's first distributors, and I said, it doesn't seem like they're listening to their customers. And he goes, well, you got to put it in perspective and see where they're going. And they don't have a public roadmap, and this is as close as I can get to it. So I still refer to this conversation all the time. And this person to
Yeah.
me is very reliable. And he said, the goal of this whole unified platform is that a mom and pop, cafe, bakery, they can order all of this gear and install this without having an IT person or without having to know anything about IT, right? He's like phones, cameras, Wi-Fi, the whole bit. And if you look at the direction they're going, they're getting close to that. You know, you still have to understand networking. You still have to understand things like that to make things work properly. Like one of the features that I would like them to disable, and I want to know how you feel about this, but in the UDMs, now they have this auto grow VLAN, right? Where if your VLAN starts running out of IP addresses, it'll automatically switch to subnet mask and do all that business. I've
Yep.
asked them to turn that off by default instead of on by default, because if you're setting this up in a small business and you've got servers that have static IPs, devices that are all
Yeah.
static, and now all of a sudden you start messing with the subnet mask, you could have some crazy unintended consequences.
Yeah. So if someone's the thing I think about, if someone's got some experience with networking, understands how everything works, and then they come to Unify and that's on by default, that's not going to give them really a good impression. They just say, "Oh, that's rubbish"
Yeah.
or whatever. So, I've had people do that before. We've been at the Whisper I used to work at. We've had some Ubiquity stuff in, and there's some guys there that are real experts in networking, and the Ubiquity stuff's done something weird, and so that's rubbish. We'll get rid of that, and it's just a bit when that I wonder how much that happens.
So
So
back in 2018, I had a customer, and they're a real estate title company, and
yeah,
we're not talking like houses, we're talking like islands. And so they're doing titles for very large contracts and stuff like that. Well, they got hooked up with Berkshire Hathaway, and they had to do a point-to-point VPN between Berkshire Hathaway and their office. Now, I had worked with the
yeah,
administrator of the system for like 20, 25 hours, tuning all the firewall rules, so people couldn't get certain places. I still have the email I
yeah,
have, and this was at that time, and I don't know if they've reversed course or not, but I had an email from one of the IT people at Berkshire Hathaway saying, if you're going to have a site-to-site VPN with us, you have to go to Palo Alto because Ubiquity doesn't meet our security standards, right? So that, like I said, I think that was like 2018. Now that could have been resolved. I don't know. Um, there is something to be said when you need high assurance, for being able to pick up the phone
yeah,
and talk to people. Um, so it's interesting, and I get emails all the time like, hey, I'm a Cisco guy, hey, I'm a Juniper guy. Um, I can do this on Cisco and Juniper, but this Ubiquity thing, I don't know why they do it the way they do it. Another example of that
yeah,
is that, and so this is like, I think this is peering into that objective of Ubiquity trying to make it so that people don't need necessarily to get somebody with some IT skills to set this stuff up. And that's, when you create a VLAN, whether it has an interface on a UDM or a USG, or whether it's just a VLAN only, it propagates that as tagged to all switch ports, to all unified switch ports. And that's typically, from a
yep,
security standpoint, that's typically not what we're trying to achieve, right? We want a finer grain
yep,
control over those things. And so some of those things that they're doing to make it easier for people, I think they get a bad rap from people who've been in the industry a while because they do those things. And um, I don't know I don't know how they overcome that besides actually give us a public roadmap and give us a statement, an official statement saying this is why we do it.
yeah. That would be quite helpful. that's what I always assumed that was the goal. Like, make it more simple for people to use. But it's interesting that that is actually what it is, and it makes a lot of sense that why they do things the way they do it. Like you mentioned VLANs, like the way you add a VLAN on Unify, if you know how to use VLANs on other switches and things, and edge routers as well, edge switches, the whole process on Unify is completely backward. I remember when I was learning how to do it, I had to go and watch a video, I think it was from Chris actually, on how to actually do it in Unify. It's just like, oh well, okay, that's a bit weird. But once you know it, it's fine. But
and I actually find it simpler because they always say ask a lazy person to do something because they'll figure out the shortest way to do it. And so like if you're just looking to create a bunch of VLANs and get it done, that does it, right? But then it leaves the security stuff on the other side. Whereas with an edge switch, you add the VLAN and it's like, okay, what now? And you have to go in manually tag or untag or so yeah, I see them definitely. They are definitely heading towards that. Now, how close they are, I don't know. I don't have any insight into the company, into the roadmap any more than anyone else that you've talked to. But every time they do a big update, they are closer and closer to that.
I know. I think I can't remember what. I think it was 7.3. I think for Unify, the amount of stuff in there now is just. I can't exactly remember what the stuff they added, but there's a lot of stuff in there which. Oh great! That's what we've been asking for. That's what we've been asking for. It's getting closer and closer, as you said. Yeah. Yeah. And other products like I've been playing with the UDR, the little this one, and that's the price point. That's perfect for what the example you said, but in playing with it, you can see how limited it is. But that's someone who's not so used to the Unify stuff isn't going to see how limited that is. They're just going to see, oh, okay, that's quite cool. It's got Peary on it. It's got a little screen, but it is when you're used to other Unify stuff, it is quite slow. It's quite limited, but
when you think about so all of the comments that I get on my videos are like, people are like, oh, I got a gigabit internet connection and it can't do this. Like the people that are being the most vocal, I think, about, especially like the UDR, the Unified Dream Router, the people that are being the most vocal about some of the they are. Yeah. I think there are less of those users. They're just louder, right? So like a normal user that wants that all-in-one device and they've got a 100 meg internet connection or 300 or maybe even a gigabit, right? But they're not the type of user that's studying exactly how much throughput they've got. They're buying this device because it fills their needs, and they're not worried about all that, the extra stuff.
No, and also I think what people fail to understand is that not everyone has a gigabit just because you do. Yeah, like I live in the countryside. We've only just got. I think last year we had upgraded from quite slow ADSL internet to the Wisp before I left, and it's only 50 meg, but it's like night and day compared to other stuff, and that's what everyone else is on. So, and the equipment that's out there is more than capable of doing that. So.
And Ubiquity, you can definitely see a little bit of that Apple influence. Robert Parra came from Apple, and you can see it in the aesthetics, and they are good looking devices. The packaging, I know people go back and forth on the packaging because you'll get a device and it'll have a really nice package, and then you get the next one and it's a cardboard box, and so, but you can definitely see that Apple influence, and I do think they're on that same path. I do think eventually they're going to get there, right, where it just works, but I still think they're a few years off from that. And I think that other vendors have seen this, and TP-Link and Ingenious, Grandstream, they've all seen this, and they're on that same path. The thing is, Ubiquity's got a head start on them, right? A couple of years. So I see the competition getting more fierce, but I think they're far enough ahead that they're probably going to be okay, unless they do something just crazy.
Yeah.
They're still going to attract new users.
Yeah, they seem to have recovered from that. I think it was January 2020 or January 2021 that I think it was that I can't remember what you called it. This stuff wasn't a hack or anything. It was just like a
Oh,
leak or whatever it was.
yeah, the
I think it was
insider
last year.
breach where they had an
Yeah,
employee. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I,
Like I think everyone forgot about that pretty much a few months after it happened. So I think they've recovered
yeah.
from that.
I don't
So
know
it
that
just
their
sort of
stock
shows.
price has completely rebounded, but I think people are back to complaining about the minutia. So I think you're probably right.
Yeah, yeah. And also on the packaging front as well, I noticed that when you buy a AP that's a single AP, that packaging is perfect and it's all nice and presented. But if you get a 5 box, then it's more. But that's how it's supposed to be. Like if someone's new to Unify, they'll get one AP to start with, and they'll get a nice experience of opening it. If you buy in bulk, they're not really designed for
Right,
MSPs and stuff. So it
right.
makes a lot of sense.
Now,
Yeah.
it's been a minute since since I've purchased a single AP. Are they still sending PoE adapters in the single units? And because I know okay, so they
Yes, I
did
think so.
stop in the multiple,
Yeah.
in the 5 packs, but
Yep.
interesting.
Yeah, I bought a U6 Pro a few months ago, and it came with a
Do you
14
have
volt
one of the
PoE.
ones
So
that'll shock you?
no, thankfully I did check I checked the date code as soon as I saw it on the forums a few weeks ago, but no,
Yeah,
thankfully
I've got to
mine's okay.
check mine. So
Yeah, it's a bit weird. I saw a video on Twitter. I think there was somebody putting it on a metal mount or something, just arcing. It was bizarre, but yeah.
it happens.
Oh well. Yeah, yeah. A lot of the way that I got into Ubiquity to start with is, as I said, from the Wisp, and then we played around with the air
Mm.
fibers when they first came out, and the lot of the nanostations and that sort of thing. So it's good. I noticed on the financial report that those products are still doing well. The UISP stuff, and everything's been rebranded at the moment. But it's good to see that their original roots are still
Yeah,
working. So
I
not
think
just the Unify stuff.
I'm not sure who it was. It might have been Evan. May have made a post last week before, declaring EdgeMax dead.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't think it's dead yet, um, but you can definitely see in UISP the influence from Unify. The one thing that I
Yep.
wish they would do is I wish they would rewrite Unify under the hood the way that they did UISP. Get away from Java, get away from MongoDB,
Mhm.
because I don't know if you've ever noticed, but the alerts on UISP, like when I have a device go down, it's almost instant. And with Unify, depending
Yeah.
on how many sites and how many devices you've got, and it doesn't matter whether you've got it on site, whether it's hosted at Hostify or with Ubiquity or wherever. I mean, I've seen it take 5, 10, 15 minutes to get an alert from Unify. And a lot of times you get the alert, the problem's already resolved, or people are upset. So I really wish that
Yep.
they would do that. I also wish that they would have like a pro mode on these new UISP devices where we can either do configurations that'll commit either through SSH or a hidden web interface or something like that. Because with edge switches, edge routers, you can get in there and really tweak the configs, and they've got a lot of really powerful options, that you can get to, and you just can't do that with UISP yet. And the hardware
No.
aesthetically, is great looking hardware. The software is really coming together,
Yeah, it's good.
but typically, and I don't think I'm alone on this, but typically my use case when I go to an edge router or an edge switch is I need to do something that Unify can't do, you know. So the
Right.
new gear's kind of hamstrung a little bit, where it doesn't have all of those features exposed in UISP. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out too. Now they did say on the forum that EdgeMax is going to stick around, but I would really like to know how much active development is going into it. Um, and I know that there's been
Mm.
calls. If you look at it, even on their forums, people are like, "Why don't you just sell Edge Max to a company that'll dump money into it?" I think it's got a huge following. But yeah, I kind of hold my breath a little bit. Edge Router 8, Edge Router 8 Pro, those are already And I think the 5 PoE, those devices are basically done. They'll get security updates. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
I really thought the Edge Router Lite at this point would be on that list, and so that surprised me that it wasn't. Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts on the differences here?
So I've done some videos for Hostify on the USP router, and there's some. You can definitely tell it's quite early. I noticed one thing that on the USP router that port 1 is by default the WAN port, but nowhere on the device does it actually say that that's the case. And you can't actually, if you want to change the port for what the WAN port's on, you can't change it either.
Yeah.
So that's a bit odd. The other thing I've noticed is there's no VPN support on the OSP router, but apart from that, I mean it's definitely okay. Thing is, I can't see what use case yet it would have. Like I noticed that the marketing stuff is all for WISPs and that sort of area, but I can't really see myself. I couldn't see a WISP using the USB router. I don't think,
Right.
not just yet, anyway.
Yeah, I think
But the USB switch definitely.
I
So
support a lot of small ISPs, and a lot of them are born out of a need, right, for this last mile connectivity. And so they'll get a hold of
yeah,
us because they need help fixing their network, and or they want to make sure that they're doing it appropriately.
yeah,
I think if they do it right, those types of users, um, they'll do right by those types of users. But I hope that they don't forget those users that got them where they're at. You know what I mean? So
yeah. I think going forward, I think the edge router stuff will stick around until the USB router stuff is fully featured. I've got the impression that the edge router, the Edge OS line, was built by people who knew how to build it at the time, and those people have since gone. And maybe it's that that the people that are on the team probably don't know. Again, I don't want to offend anyone, but probably don't know quite enough how all the ins and outs. Like it's an old project that was going on at the start of Ubiquiti, so it's one of those legacy things that people know about that have gone. So if that makes sense. And maybe that the underlying OS on it isn't quite as modern as they want it to be. So I think the USB stuff will be interesting going forward. They've got some stuff coming up. They've got like power UPS solutions. They've got new switches and things. So it'd be interesting to see what things they can offer.
And the one thing that I'm really excited about is if you look at that UISP video, and this device I don't even think is available in EA yet, and I think we'll probably have to be careful talking about it. But in that video, they show one of their new radios. It's basically a mesh backhaul WISP radio, right? So you can come in and put this on a pole and then create a mesh to other small pops in the area. I mean, if they do it right, they could. I mean, because we've been kind of doing it. I've got a customer out in Lehi, Utah, and he delivers everything via air fiber into a neighborhood, and then he's taken the MikroTik 60 gigahertz product and basically made a 360-degree array of those radios, and then blankets a neighborhood as much as he can with the 60 gigahertz. And it was a custom-made mount. I don't know how many other people were doing it. And when we came up with it, I was like, man, this is awesome. And then Ubiquiti has now they've come out with that same idea. So I actually can't wait to get my hands on that particular piece of gear.
Yeah, it's the UISP Wave. I think that's what you're referring to. They got I can't remember what they called it. It's the UISP Wave, and then the AP. It's like 90 degrees, I think, and you can blanket 3 together and have full coverage of how many degrees. But I think that looks quite interesting. The distance quotes on some of the 60 gig long range stuff is interesting. So, especially in the UK with the rain that we have, 60 gigahertz doesn't work quite as well as you'd
how
like
often
it to.
do you how often do your links that have 60 gigahertz with the 5 gigahertz failover? How often are you failing over to 5 gig?
From memory, when I used to work at the WISP, it was quite often. it just depends on what distance you have them. If you have them at a sensible distance, like 2 or 3, 4 miles, then it's fine. I've got a link at the where I live at the farm. It's only 750 meters. It's with the Gigabeam Plus, so the one without 5 gig failover. And if it's like really heavy rain, the fact you can hear it on the roof, it just disconnects. So.
That's unfortunate.
We get a lot of rain here. Yeah, but for 99% of the time, it's fine. So they've got quite a lot of new point-to-multipoint products out for Wisps now. They've got the LTU, which was really hyped for what I remember. They previewed it at Whisperpalooza a while ago, and said this is going to be our new platform going forward. I don't know if I've seen enough development on it. I'm not sure, but
and I have to wonder if the new wave and the 60 gigahertz stuff is actually going to replace that.
I don't think it will quite replace it, simply because there are Wisps that need to do big distances. So 5 gigahertz, you can go up to 30 kilometers.
Yeah, depending on conditions. Yeah, well, insane it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it might be a good point, hand in hand. Yeah, there might just be a complementary product that is less developed than the UISP stuff. So definitely. Yeah. I think that's what I've got. Unless there's anything else.
I don't have anything right now. So will you you edit this, and then it'll get edited, and then it'll get posted?
Yep. So it might be a few days.
Sure.
Usually quite large files,
let me kind of.
Yeah.
You have like an ending you want us to film here? Okay.
Yeah,
I'll let you lead.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep. Yeah. Cool. Thank you for joining me on the Creator Spotlight, Willie. It's good to have you on the show. It's always good to speak to people who make interesting stuff on YouTube and other blogs and things. So yeah, where can people find you on the social media?
Well, first, I want to thank you for having me on. This is fantastic, and I know you and I have kind of chatted back and forth, over the last few years. So it's finally good to have a solid conversation. And if you want to find me, I'm at youtube.com/Willie Howe. That's WILLIEHOWE. If you want to reach out because you need consulting or you're bored and you want to yell at me, you can go to williehowe.com, and we've got a contact form or a hire us button on there. And there's also links to all of our social media at the bottom of the page.
Fantastic. And you can find the interface at theinterface.uk, and the link to this podcast will be in a separate blog post once it goes. Well, the link to this podcast will be in a separate blog post. And yeah, you can find out more about Ubiquity at ui.com. And thank you for joining me.
All right. Thanks, Alex.
Cheers.